Dave Nadig, financial futurist for VettaFi. I see you've been spending a lot of time up in Canada during the second half of this year. Have you moved to Toronto?
Have you seen real estate prices in Toronto? No, I should have moved to Toronto a long time ago. No, Toronto is one of my favorite cities in the world. I have not moved to Toronto. But the honest truth is, as an ETF guy, I've been going to Canada for the 90s because it's the canary in the coal mine for Western democratic capitalism, financial product development and innovation. It's a heck of a boiler room of great ideas.
Yeah, I well said, Dave. I too love going up that way. The dynamism of the ETF community, especially leaning into innovation, is just unlike anything I've experienced relative to New York, London, you name it. It's a pretty dynamic ETF and healthy community up that way. What excites you most about Canada and the ETF marketplace?
There's this give and take between really Toronto and New York. I mean, if we want to call it, right, it's between the SEC regulating Wall Street and the Ontario Securities Commission effectively regulating the entirety of Canadian markets, even though it's technically a provincial government regulator. There's this push and pull because on the one hand, when the SEC does something like we're going to go to sub-penny pricing, Canada has to pay attention because there's so much cross-border transactions that happen. But by the same token, because Canada is its own jurisdiction and is its own capital markets and its own government, they can set their own rules. And so that lets them do is innovate in some pretty exciting ways. So we've already got a handful of products that are really only up there. Things like spot Bitcoin, you can only get in Canada right now. There's the high yield savings accounts, which are effectively a sort of hack on the capital structure to allow big ETFs to invest in what are really sort of free toaster teaser rate level accounts at banks, which I think is a great hack on that system. And the dominance of things like options overlay strategies, those are all really Canadian at heart. And the US is going to learn from those experiments over time. We already are. A lot of what we know about things like a Bitcoin ETF, we've learned because of the work that folks like Purpose have done up in Toronto, getting those products out there first. So I think it's a great sort of bilateral exchange of ideas where, the US may have some bona fides because of our size, but Canada gets to really play in the sandbox in a way that we don't.
Yeah, I've always thought about it as two distinctively different markets, but oddly symbiotic. Like the play between the markets are pretty cool. And whether it's the US paying attention to what Canada does next or vice versa, like I think it actually accelerates global ETF innovation. Dave, I love watching your clips, whether you're talking to the folks at Invesco. I know you're talking to the folks at Purpose pretty soon. You've been talking to the folks at BNY. When you speak with all these thought leaders up in Canada, do any trends emerge where you think like, ooh, there's a common thread and I'm hearing this from another firm and another firm and another firm?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of attention on the individual investor and really solving their full portfolio needs. Some of that shows up in products, right? So there are a lot of single ticker products in Canada. We basically have none here in the US, like a portfolio in a box type solution. And there really is that focus on making sure that the products that they're developing are for that end individual customer. In the US, I think sometimes we in the ETF industry get pulled in a lot of different directions because ETFs started here institutionally. There's still a lot of heavy duty institutional development products the average individual probably shouldn't be buying. And so there is that focus on the individual that I really love about the Canadian market. And I think that we'll probably see more and more of that here in the US. We already have with the launch of a lot of new players here in the space, JP Morgan and people like that, targeting product really for the individual investor. I think we're going to see more of that. And I think that's healthy.
Yeah. Okay, Dave, I got one more question for you. And I know we're live right now, so I think I need to correct something I just said. I think I mentioned BNY, but I meant to say BMO up there.
BMO, I thought so.
I was thinking about that symbiotic relationship between the two and like started to mix firms. Final question for you. You're a financial futurist. You're always thinking about what's next and then what's after that and what's after that. What's your predictions for the Canadian ETF market as you think 3-5 years out?
I think it's very rosy, not to get too into the weeds, but I think there's some restructuring going on around how financial products are sold to individuals. So in Canada, a lot of folks get access to investment products by going to a bank branch and then talking to somebody who is really a sort of licensed just to sell a certain set of mutual funds. So it's not really like a full financial advisor relationship, nor is it really even a full service kind of brokerage relationship. It's very narrow. Yeah. That's changing. Most of those folks are now getting licensed to be able to sell ETFs to everybody. As with the US and Canada, the ETF is generally the better wrapper for most use cases. And I think that that's going to just continue to accelerate adoption.
Yeah, I think you're right. Dave, thanks for a quick take on the Canadian marketplace. When are you back up there again?
Not soon enough, but probably in the spring.
Okay. I hope to see you up there myself. I love visiting the city of Toronto. Thanks again for the time, Dave. Until next time.
Cheers.